Ron here for this week's episode of Fearless Flight Live. I'm going to try to do, did that come off? Am I sharing the title screen there?
Yes.
Yeah, you nailed it there.
Cool. I want to be a smooth person in the news direction room here anyway. So we just want to say hi to everybody. And this is Fearless Flight. This is for anybody who's afraid to fly. If you know somebody who's afraid to fly, or you just like to talk about airplanes, we're glad to have you. And the first thing we always mention is our Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather group. And let me go to that slide there. If you haven't joined, we really encourage you to do that because it's a great place to meet fearful flyers like yourself. And that's the third leg of our stool, our Fearless Flight method. And that is joining community so that you got somebody that you can talk to that has some empathy and understands what you're going through. Because that's the biggest thing that people tell me, you know, that even their family members, it's like they don't get it. And it has consequences when you feel like you're all alone, feel like you're crazy, and you tend to withdraw. And that's the worst thing you can do. We want you to come out of your shell and join us. So here we are again. And when you join, or if you were joining, when you go over to the Birds of a Feather group, please stop in, leave a remark there, and introduce yourself, and just enjoy all the connections that you'll make up there. Have a lot of people. As a matter of fact, our guest tonight is Patti Oliver, and let me put up the slide there. Need some traveling music. Oh, I can't believe that I can actually pull this off. Yeah, so we've got a special guest, Patti Oliver. Patti has gone through in the program about 12 years ago. We were just reconnecting here before the show, and I saw Patti put a comment in on the Birds of a Feather group, and so it was really appropriate for her to join and us to emphasize how important that is to stay connected. And Patti's going to share her story and what's going on with her today. We're always open to questions. If you've got anything that you want to add, please put it in the remarks there. And our sleuths, Diane, Dieter, and Eric, who are joining us again, and you can see their smiling faces here in a larger display in just a minute. And we'll talk about the monthly live coaching webinar, which is the third Thursday of every month. And we'll also mention our Fearless Flight Club and how effective that's proving to be. I mentioned last week about if you have any doubts about what to do, where you're headed, please consider a free 15-minute coaching session. And many of you responded. I got quite a few people that signed up for responses and are still signing up yet this week. So if you have any interest at all, please go over there. I just want to give you, here's a little, we do a little bit of an intake when you make an appointment. And this will just give you a sample of what we ask people. You know, this person here doesn't fly regularly, but they have a flight coming up in the next 90 days. And they've never had a bad experience because they've never flown. So this is one of the rare people out there that has never been in an airplane, and they have no idea what to experience. They just never flew as a family growing up. And she had a tragedy. She had a car accident when she was 21, and that the trauma probably resided or settled in and became part of her fear. And she misses flying because everybody travels without her, including her husband and kids. And she accepted a new job that's going to require travel, and so that's going to be a challenge. And she talks about the challenges as being, like she said, never flown again in the new job coming up. So I'm excited that we'll be able to talk. Her appointment's coming up tomorrow, I believe. And so again, I want to encourage anybody out there who is just kind of struggling for what to do next. Please come in and sign up for a coaching session. So I'm going to ask Patti to come and join us here. Patti Oliver when I met her, she was in Phoenix, and we decided it was 12 years ago. And I remember flying with her and another woman named Michelle. And as is mostly or usually the case, I accused Patti of being just somebody who really wasn't afraid, just wanted the attention because she did so fabulous on the flight. I remember that fun person. Michelle was fun. I remember we did just like she's doing now, a lot of laughing and stuff. So welcome, Patti, and thank you for coming. And that's what you get for making a comment on the Birds of a Feather. Because as soon as I saw your name, I said, man, I got to get her on here. So anyway, so we talked about some things to talk about here. So what was your history? What was the story that kept you from flying when you first came?
So my father was a pilot in the Air Force for almost 30 years. So
that's right. We figured you knew too much. That's right.
So he was very disappointed when I actually went 19 years without flying. I got married, moved to Germany with my husband right shortly after we got married, and I had that 8-hour flight, and I think that's the first time I realized I was starting to get uneasy with flying. And then we were there for 3 years, and then I had to get back. So I didn't have a choice. I got on a plane to get back. And then that's when my fear fully set in. And it was so fearful that I can tell you, I rode with my husband on a train for 48 hours from New Orleans to LA with a 2.5-year-old and a 6-month-old baby because I wouldn't get on a plane. So yeah. And we didn't have like a car or anything. We sat in seats.
Sitting up. Yeah.
We were young and broke, and we sat in seats for 48 hours. So I think, and just once I made that initial kind of decision not to fly, I just would not get on a plane. My fear got progressively worse. I had kids. I was afraid of dying. Very fearful of that lack of control. You're on a plane. If something starts to go wrong, I can't do anything about it. If I'm driving a car, I can at least try. And I just felt a complete lack of control and fear.
Yeah.
I missed weddings. I missed family events. I missed a lot of stuff. Opportunities to travel, go on vacations, and my whole family was kind of held hostage by my fear. Because they didn't travel without me. And so I just reached a point. My kids were older. I knew I wanted to be able to travel. I always wanted to go to Hawaii. And my husband really wanted me to get on a plane with him. And so we started Googling. I was living in Tucson at the time. We found you. Set up a time to speak with you, and then ended up kind of meeting you at the airport. We made the decision to do a short flight, I think it was to Burbank and back.
Yep.
And that was just like the beginning of a really great life for me. And I'm forever grateful to you for that, because it's been great since then.
What were some of the triggers for you that acted as obstacles between you and being comfortable on an airplane?
I just had an overwhelming fear of falling out of the sky. Like if something was going to go wrong, there was nothing I could do about it. And I was going to know it for 2 minutes before, I just had an overwhelming fear. And I don't know if it was having kids and feeling my, wanting to be here for them, that it got really bad. But that's when it got too much for me to get on a plane after I had kids. Yeah.
And that's, you probably have heard me say that that's reported by a lot of women in particular, and some men too, who become fathers for the first time. It's when, it's like that increased sense of responsibility is like, okay, that's it. I can't take that chance anymore. Right. And it's fascinating. So when we, what did you do? I mean, we talked, obviously. Was I doing the 201, face to face, and then we were going flying, or did we just coach, and then you and I and Michelle met at the airport and we flew?
That's how it went. The latter.
Okay.
I mean, you talked to me a lot. You really spoke to me through facts, statistics. Yeah. Like you really helped me to understand, the chances of anything happening, the likelihood. I think one of the things I remember you saying to me, and I hope I've got this right because it has been 12 years. Yeah. I think we were talking about turbulence, and you likened it to a ball floating on waves. Sure. Because I always thought if you hit turbulence, was the plane going to shake and go down or whatever? Right. And kind of that concept of just floating on waves, and it's not really going anywhere. It's just floating, right. Through it. I don't know. I've literally never been bothered by turbulence since you kind of gave that example.
And that's an example of what we now call, I've got a course in the cloud now. And the first thing I ask people to do is tell me what the triggers are, but make a story out of it. So once upon a time, there was a young lady named Patti, and she thought about turbulence and had this fear that the airplane would plummet or that pilots would lose control and whatnot. And then I have them culminate after they do some studying and learning and educating themselves. And I have them rewrite it and say, now, and yours, the rewrite is now I think about floating on the clouds, and I don't think about, and that because we basically, as human beings, we have this thing. The good news is we have conscious awareness. So we can process information unlike the other animals, right? And we can look for patterns in our environment, and we can put stories together about, that help us predict the future to some degree. Don't go in that clump of grass over there because there's lions in there, and be careful. The downside is we have conscious awareness. So some of the stories we make up are incredibly fearful stories, and so it works against us in that way. And so that's why I say that the main thing that we have to do is to educate yourself when there's something in it, not just flying, but this happens to be the reason we get together. So you have to learn about myths that you might have or things that you simply don't know. And the brain it makes up stories if it doesn't know. So anyway, so when we went flying and we met at the airport, what was that like for you that day when leading up to the airport and putting it all on the line?
I have the worst memory, but I remember very vividly that morning before we went to the airport, like running up and down my hallway and my upstairs going, I'm getting on a plane today. I'm getting on, like, just kind of it was so wound up. I had so much adrenaline and full transparency. So the first probably 5 times I flew, I took a half a Valium, so about 2.5 milligrams, because the anticipatory anxiety, I was afraid I wouldn't get out of the car. Like I needed just to take the edge off. And so I did that, and it kind of relaxed me enough. And then as I mentioned, I got a job where I had to travel for work, and I realized I was too tired at meetings. I was sluggish and all that. So I had to just stop taking it. And I went cold turkey. And I think, like I said, it was maybe 5 flights. And I think the other thing that kind of helped with that was I had to fly a lot within the state of California. So I did a lot of up and back flights.
Sure.
So if I didn't allow a lot of time to pass in between flights, it seemed to get easier as well. Yeah. And so I think, that very first time, I just remember the adrenaline flowing, and you were a very calming presence, Captain Ron. So we got there, you sat between us. I was with another very, very anxious flyer. And boy, it just was so calming to have you there. You talked us through everything. You kept us distracted, and it was really good.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you when we talked the other day about this. You were cautious about saying, well, I don't want to spill the beans, but what can I? What about the Valium stuff? And I want to take that opportunity because I totally encourage people to use medications if they need to. I would like for everybody to not ultimately, like you, not have to use them. But I tell people, the most important thing that you can do to get over your fear flying is buy a ticket, I would say. But the basis is exposure. If you never get on the airplane, you'll never get past it. And the more sober you can be when you get on an airplane, the better it's going to be. Because if you are so medicated or down with alcohol, it numbs that part of the brain, so you don't get the therapeutic experience of going through it and overcoming it. So you're a perfect example how you try to use an intelligent dose that keeps your anxiety, keeps you below a 10 at least, because if you get on and you're a 10, it's really tough. You don't have any resilience. You don't have any wiggle room for even the littlest disruption, but you did it perfectly, if there is such a thing. And that, take enough to get you on there where you can practice some skills, get some of the benefits of exposure, and then eventually wean yourself off. And that's a great example. And thanks for being so honest with that. But I definitely encourage people, to do that, because I have a lot of people that say, well, I had to cheat a little bit. I had to take a little bit of Xanax or something like that. I said, that's not cheating. That's using, that's using chemistry to your advantage, because it does work for some people. The main thing I tell people is when they get it prescribed for them is make sure you have an opportunity to use it before you go fly so that it's not a surprise to you, because I have had people that didn't use it and then it didn't either work sometimes, or they did feel really sluggish, and they got a little bit frightened because they felt a little bit out of control and all that. So yeah.
One small thing about it, I think it's kind of funny. I just asked my physician for it. Clearly, you have to get it prescribed, and I just got 5 tablets, and like I said, I broke them in half, and it's been 12 years. I have a bottle that you can't even read the label on anymore that has my final half tablet left in it that I never took. And I just keep it because it's the thing that kind of got me over the hump.
Yeah. And like I indicated before, so I saw your post in the Birds of a Feather. So you continue to stay connected. What level this is 12 years, you're flying okay now. I mean, and we'll touch on that in a minute. So what's the motivation for staying connected to the group?
It was such a big debilitating part of my life. It was literally 19 years. And, it resonated to me at the top of the show when you talked about family members not understanding or whatever, because like I said, my dad was a pilot. He thought I was nuts that I would be afraid to fly. He even took me up in a Cessna one time after he retired. And that, I think, also caused me a great deal of anxiety, the small plane. Yeah. But I so feel for people that are paralyzed by this fear, because I got to go to Hawaii for my 50th birthday, which was a dream of mine that never would have happened. I get to see my elderly parents, fly to see them. And I just, so much of my life and so many good things in my life and good people, I feel so much for the people that are too afraid. And I know if I could get those 19 years back, there's so many things I would have done. So I like to read this stuff, and I love to hear the comments, the support of the group. It's really kind of just reminds me of where I came from, and that I really feel for people and hope that they will also get help.
Well, I really appreciate you staying connected and contributing like that, because it really does help. People look at Eric and I and Diane to some degree, like, well, of course you're not afraid to fly and all that, although I've had anxiety issues of my own in other areas of my life. And so, but it really does help for you to comment to people and support other people. So thanks for doing that. I really mean that. Then have you, when you fly, do you ever get any triggers? Let's say you encounter turbulence or something like that. Do you notice any, low level anxiety or anything like that? Or
I mentioned this to you earlier. I don't know what it is, if it was the first few times I flew that I took the Valium, or that I get so wound up and then I'm just exhausted, but I fall asleep almost immediately on planes now. I don't feel the anxiety. I am guilty sometimes, I will say, of what I call doom scrolling. So if I see something in the news that happened with the plane or some, tragic event, I find myself starting to read it, and then I have to stop myself because I'm afraid. Okay. I'm afraid I could go back down that rabbit hole. So I have to be very conscious not to spend too much time on tragedies, around planes.
I love that doom scrolling.
Yes.
I mean, and we live in an era of total doom scrolling. I mean, not just about flying, but everything out there. So that's important to know too. So it's, and because people ask me, he said, can I ever get over this? Can I ever get to that point? And I tell them, yeah, it really is a function of you have to be motivated to do that, and stay with it. And the hardest thing I think for a lot of people is we just don't fly enough. And so it's hard to internalize it, but I think you're a great example of you can internalize the benefits of some knowledge and the experience and the exposure, and you can get to that point where you don't go to the depths that you did before, and so that's a great thing. What advice do you have about anybody out there, that's looking right now and is saying, yeah, but she was not as bad as I am, or she's not as bad as I was, or,
I always felt like nobody was as bad as me. You know, like I almost
Yeah.
wore it as a badge of honor that I'd go, I haven't flown for 19 years. I'm so afraid. I rode a train for 48 hours. You know, like
Yeah.
it was almost a badge of honor for me to say how long I had not flown. I know that
Right.
sounds odd, but I remember always telling people how long it was that I didn't fly because I wanted them to know I wasn't joking. I was like really fearful of flying. And so, I mean, for me, the thing that helped me, and I was lucky because it was part of my job and it was short flights. I flew a lot and I flew consistently. And it was like 1 hour flights from San Diego to San Francisco or whatever. And then I'd
Yeah.
come back the same day. I noticed if there was times I didn't fly for a few months, I'd start to feel it creeping back up and I'd have to
Sure.
get back to the plane. But I know that's not feasible for everybody, right? You're not, who can
Right. Right.
or didn't fly all the time. So
Yeah.
that's what got me through the hardest parts.
Okay.
Um, and then it just, like I said, it doesn't occur to me anymore to have that fear that I'm going to fall out of the sky or something completely tragic is going to happen. I don't know. I just think it was the consistency in flying. It really
Yeah.
was just,
Yeah. Well, listen, one of the things I think was probably really helpful is you did have a lot of flights. The quantity is important, and I think the short length and stuff. So you have a lot of ups and downs because the takeoffs and landings. Even when people tell me that they're not really bothered by takeoff and landing so much, in the back of my mind, I know, but it's the whole cycle and stuff. You know, in fact, we don't just measure the hours on an airframe; we measure the cycles. That's what's more important. So if an airplane is operating in short range things, we consider it under greater wear if it does 10 landings a day than if it does 2 landings a day, because it has to pressurize each time and all the systems have to go. So I guess we could say we're kind of like the airplanes in a way. The number of cycles we do is really can be more therapeutic and helpful to that. Let me ask Dieter and I think Eric's monitoring the boards too. See if anybody has any questions for you. I'm sure there's somebody out there that says, way to go, and thanks for being here. But anything that shows up, Dieter?
Eric, do you wanna go ahead? I do have a couple as well. So
Yeah, I was reading about most of them were going back and forth with each other. So I didn't see anything directly that I needed to respond to, but I sure will if you want.
So the one question that I got, and that's a great question to ask you. So when you didn't have the belief yet that you could get over this, yeah, were there things that you did do in support of before finding FearlessFlight and Capt Ron? Was there anything that you
So
tried
before she met us at FearlessFlight, anything you had you tried to attack it before that, or no?
I just refuse. I would just refuse to fly. And I do think having you physically get on the plane with me is, I'm not sure. I don't know, I can't look back and say, but I think having you there literally talking to me the entire time, explaining, I think that's what got me over the hump. I really believe that. In addition to the knowledge, yeah. I mean,
yeah, and that's the essence of the story we tell ourselves. I've had people tell me that they thought I might be able to actually walk across water. I've tried it. I could not do it, and so thanks for laughing. But I really, when I fly with people, or when Dieter or Eric or Diane, when we fly with people, there is a story that goes with that, and it may be as simple as, okay, the universe wouldn't dare make anything go wrong when I've got these guys on board with me. It ranges from that to, I think the most important thing is to have somebody there that you could ask if something goes on that you don't experience. And that's what I think is the biggest thing. And, and on the one hand, I'm reluctant to say that because then people say, well, I'm not going to fly unless I can fly with you or Eric or Diane or something like that. But it doesn't have to be that way. We've had tons of people that have done it. And the key is that, first of all, when people say, thanks, Capt Ron, and virtually every day somebody writes to me and says, thanks for all you do and all that. And my first comment is, don't blame your success on me. So I'm going to say that to you as well. Without you taking the first step, which is really the hardest one, so I tell everybody, pat yourself on the back just for just for checking us out, because it's really hard for people to do that. The fear of flying is just a phobia of sorts, but it's a big one, because you can do a lot of baby steps, but there's one gigantic step you have to take, and that's get on that stinking airplane. And so for you to do that, and anybody else that does that, it takes a lot of courage, however you get there. And I do believe that a big part of when I fly with people is just there's a story of some sort that says, okay, I feel comfortable because I can ask somebody if I have uncertainty. And now I advertise to people with everybody, most of the US and I think foreign carriers now, the big ones anyway, they have free texting when you're in flight. So I'll actually text people and stuff. And there's been a number of people that will just say, hey, Captain Ron, the captain just made an announcement, says we're going to have significant turbulence. What does he mean, significant turbulence? And sometimes, it'll be an hour later before I see it sometimes, but I'll just write something back and they'll tell me that was so helpful, But again, I think it's just the story and the ability to reach out to somebody. And so that's why, I believe a lot. What we're really trying to help now, in addition to the course in the cloud that we have, is a lot of audio and visualizations and stuff. And when we do the monthly coaching program now, the monthly coaching session, we do a visualization with each one of that, and I'm working with a fellow in Australia, and I just had him make me a list of all the things you go through. And he's got everything from, packing my clothes. It makes me freak out, just anything that connects to flying. And so I've just done the most pathetic audios of just, okay, you're packing your clothes and you're getting ready to fly, but it's going to be okay or whatever. And that seems to help, and we'll find out, because he's got to go from there to Singapore to Germany, which is like 23 hours total flight on 2 flights. So anyway.
Yeah, I wonder if I could do that long of a flight, but I sorry, I do want to say one thing, because I feel like, I'm 12 years in. And so I don't want to make light of, I'm sitting here going, yeah, I'm fine. It's great. It was a process,
Yes.
Right. That first step was tough. And my second, my third flight, I wasn't like, woo, I'm cured. It was a process. But where I sit today is a person who is not afraid to get on a plane, who doesn't get anxious before I fly, sleep, but it didn't happen my first flight. It didn't happen overnight. And it was a process. So I feel like sometimes I almost forget where I was. And it's important for people that are just getting on planes that, if you're still anxious after that first or second flight, it's okay. It's just a process.
And thanks for saying that, because that's the thing that I try to convey as well, is it is a process. Those are the very words we use. It's not likely that you'll be completely cured the next flight. You're going to have anxiety, but you'll have also, what I find is that you'll have a feeling that you can limit the anxiety. Before people take that first step, it's like they're really afraid of the fear of being overcome by their own emotions. Whether you're afraid of the airplane crashing or whether you're afraid of being claustrophobic. And it's when they get that first flight under their belt, and if they don't crash, they get off and say, I could do that. Yeah, exactly. And then it is, because when you get on the second time with a little more confidence, that just that bit of confidence that you won't lose control, that's enough to get people to keep doing it. And that's the hard part, if you don't have the opportunity to fly a little bit more regularly after that. But thanks for saying that, Patti. And because I think that's probably the thing that most people will resonate with tonight is, okay, so you did it. What's it like? It's a process. Go ahead.
There's a question Shally asked. So you didn't have an issue of being claustrophobic riding on a train? Is that?
No, I'm not claustrophobic. It was truly a fear of plane crashing.
So it's really just that. Okay. Yeah. And just to your, there is definitely in a continuum, there is a point at which, the practice is settled within you so much that, now you actually, build upon that new resting foundation. And Jim Duke said the same thing. He said, I was concerned that not flying from, 2019 to 2022, would bring up these challenges, and then when he actually went through the process of flying, he realized no, that was not at all the case, and I believe Jim didn't fly for 30 years. So,
getting back on the horse and or riding a bike, and you won't forget it if you go through this process. That's the difference between coming up with a process for yourself rather than just trying to guts it out. Because I've had business people say, well, I've flown, a lot in the last 2 years or something like that, and I'm not getting any better. But it's you have to infuse some kind of new information to change the process that you go through. You have to change the story that you tell yourself in order to get a different result at the end. And I think you're a great example of that, Patti, and totally motivated. And thanks so much for coming on tonight. I really, really appreciate that. I want to compliment you for the courage to even step forward 12 years ago. And I hope you have long life and great. And you're headed to Hawaii now, or you've been to Hawaii?
No, I went for my 50th. So
yeah.
Which was a couple years ago. Yeah.
Well, belated happy birthday, and I'm glad you got to Hawaii. So, okay, so you can stay with us. We're going to just do a little bit of housekeeping and stuff. But thanks so much for being with us. I really appreciate it, Patti.
Actually, one more question, Patti, real quick, because you've gone through the process so long ago. I'm not sure if that was a thing back in 2012. But we do in the group, and I know that a lot of people just feel better knowing that their flights are being tracked. And yes, thank you, Oliver, for pointing that out, because just knowing that there's somebody that watches not over me, but watches with me and kind of is there. Was that something that you at all needed or wanted, or even was it a thing in 2012? I don't quite remember if there was.
If it was, I didn't know about it, or I didn't have a big enough data plan. But yeah, I don't think it was. It's true. It's a very self kind of contained fear that I had that was just strictly focused on me, and not even. I almost feel like at that time that kind of data might have been too much for me. As opposed to just focusing on myself on that flight and what I was doing in that moment.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because, just like over time, we've noticed, and we definitely have the data in the surveys, over time, people are more worried and anxious about their own airworthiness, so that they don't lose control, they don't freak out, they don't become, the next TikTok video of somebody being dragged off or something. From that being the airplane being the problem. Do you know what I mean? So over the years, it's definitely come more to, how airworthy am I versus the plane.
Very true. Yep.
And a lot of us are superstitious too. So that plays in, I've had people, some people are more worried that, if they were miserable for 1 hour, then a 6-hour flight must be 6 times as miserable, right? Because it never gets up. But some of them are, if I made it for an hour, I don't want to push my luck for 2 hours, So everything went okay. So I don't want to take any more chances. So it's a complex subject, but like you said, it's a process, and it's really important to first start out. What's the story you're telling yourself? Because most of us don't even have an awareness that we're telling ourselves a story. We just feel so dreadful on the inside when you think about flying, and we're wired. That's our intuition, and it says if you feel that bad, there's got to be some truth to the danger that you're anticipating, and it's just not the case. So,
and I know you're trying to wrap up, but I will say that has occurred to me, because Australia is somewhere I would like to go someday, but
yeah.
I don't know if I can get on a plane for 23 hours, because I do think the longer you're on it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would have to really sit down and think about how I'd occupy myself for that amount of time.
Well, the good thing about it is you will probably want to sleep sooner or later. Yeah. So that is it. And I will tell everybody out there, having done this myself, if you can get the most expensive seats that you can afford, and if you can get the ones where you lay down, that's the best way to go. Because not only do you get to sleep prone like that, but you also have a little bit more space around you and stuff like that. And I know that may be a high bar for some people, but if you have that, it's really, really helpful to do that on a long flight. Because you know, for me, it's a long flight. I did my first.
I don't feel afraid thinking about it. I'm just wondering though, with that much time on my hands, what I would do. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll check back in with us before you go, and whatever information we have, and I definitely,
after I go,
want to talk to you after you go down there. So anyway, but thanks, Patti. I really appreciate it. You're a courageous person, and you're a great inspiration for everybody out there. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I think you're a great inspiration. I think the whole team is great. I really appreciate you guys and what you're doing.
Thanks.
Out there, I really appreciate it.
Did you get your power back and everything?
Got it today. Yeah, got it today.
Right, cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, okay, thanks. Have a great evening. All right.
Thank you so much.
I was watching the chat, and I don't know who put the comment in that they feel better with nuns and babies on the flight. And I go, that's good. That's like the karmic opposite of a rock band, probably. If you got the nuns and babies, you're good. If you got the rock band, yeah, maybe not so much.
Not so much.
Only if the babies sleep.
Right.
You're right. All right. So I want to say a quick word about the upcoming. Holy cow! This is, before you know it, there's another one. May 18th, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. We're going to have, and that should be daylight time and not standard time. We're going to have our next global online course, monthly live group coaching call. And we're going to talk about actually building a flight log, something that you can do, as Patti is concerned about, for long flights. What can you do to make that more palatable and make it something that is easier to endure? And one of the things is you can turn it into a job like we do as crew members. You can come up with things to do and challenge yourself. So we're going to do that live, and we'll always, as always, we'll be entertaining anybody's specific questions. Maybe doing a little bit of 101 demonstrating some coaching for people. And we'll have some surprises and some new information as well. So we hope that you can make it. I mentioned before that the coaching program is alive and well. We just passed our first anniversary from doing that. I couldn't believe that we've done that many of them already, and it is the case for everything. Anything that we have, all of our programs now are accessible through an app. And we're really grateful for that. So so whatever you have, it'll show up in the app on your phone, and now you can do it on demand whenever you want to, and not have to wait for somebody else or for us to do something formally. So okay,
I'm just gonna jump in, Shally. This is really the best way of how you can use the Fearless Flight Kit, and also not just for you, but for anyone who is in the Clit for Takeoff 201 or who is a Fearless Flyer Club member. You actually get access to this whole past year of group coaching calls, and we even in the Fearless Flyer Club, we actually have a whole section with meditations, audio and video meditations for you. So you could literally go through that, and gosh, there are so many hours of really, really good content that
when you know you're getting better, when at some point you want to reach through and strangle one of us because now you're thinking about something else. Yes. And literally that's what you do. You just keep swallowing information so that you know something's better than you know your own name. And I mean, that's basically how we do flying. We train and train and train until it becomes part of our muscle memory, and we get better at it. And Patti's living proof of that. So anyway, anybody else have any parting comments, parting words?
Okay. I'm just gonna answer that question. How much is the monthly group? And I'm gonna be honest, it's not a chat. It's different from our weekly live show, because we really go in where it happens, and that is inside of you. and not in the plane, but we use the plane as part of the mechanisms to get deeper. So that's the first answer. The second answer is you can join a one-time. So for example, on May 18th, it's $47, or you could become a member of the Fearless Flyer Club for $37 a month. And then you not only get the monthly live group coaching webinars, but you also get other programs like Ron has on the screen right now. So depending on which level you choose. I hope that answers the question. I'll put the link in the comments as soon as we're up.
And they're all available through the app. So anyway, thanks, Dieter. Thanks, Diane. Thanks. Hope you get feeling better, Diane. And Eric, I hope you get feeling better. And that does it for another week of Fearless Flight Live. We'll see you again next week, and have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Guys.
Good night,